Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update concerning the peace negotiations and the declarations from the United States, from Zelenskyy, from Europe, uh, about the meeting between Witkoff and Russia, what was proposed, what was taken back, what Trump has said. And we're going to look at it all. It is an absolute disaster. There's no doubt that Putin has just completely owned Trump, and it's deeply, deeply embarrassing. I mean, I am enraged by what has happened. It's naivety at its greatest or worst. And the US appears to have been blinded by some amazing new proposal that looks identical to all the previous proposals. Yesterday was supposed to be the day of sanctions that Trump said 10 to 12, we're going to move it forward. 50 days is now 10 to 12 days. We're going to put sanctions on Russia if they don't agree to a ceasefire, to peace negotiations. And Russia come back with a ridiculous proposal that only benefits Russia. And the US goes, oh, wonderful. Oh, Trump goes, oh, wonderful. This is, oh, well done, Witkoff. And doesn't put any sanctions on. It's pathetic, absolutely pathetic. So I'm super angry with what has happened. I think Trump is useless. I think Witkoff is worse than useless as his special envoy. I mean, go and play golf, go and sell some real estate somewhere else, but do not be an envoy to Russia, working to negotiate incredibly complex deals when you apparently don't understand anything about these deals and about these places. You have an abject lack of knowledge. Anyway, context. Let's remember what Russia has done over and over and over. Since 1991, Russia's been carving out chunks of its neighbours like a butcher. Transnistria from Moldova in 1992, Abkhazia and South Ossetia from Georgia in 2008, Donbass and Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, and then in 2022 again. But trust me, bro, this time it's going to be different. Somehow Russia's learnt from the past and isn't going to do what it's always done. This isn't just about carving out annexed regions of countries that it does not control so that it does somewhat control them. That is what's going on here. It's just another imperialistic project from a narcissistic, megalomaniacal dictator. That many people don't seem to understand who Putin is and what Russia has done just shows complete naivety again. Now, let's look back in history to understand what's going on here. If there is a deal that is forced upon Ukraine, we can go back to the Munich Agreement between Hitler and other world leaders just before the breakout of World War II to understand that what Russia is doing is what Putin is doing is what Hitler did in 1938. Britain and France, seeking to avoid war, signed a Munich Agreement allowing Hitler to occupy the Sudetenland, where many ethnic Germans live, occupy certain areas of Ukraine where many ethnic Russians live, as they would claim. Czechoslovakia was not even invited to the negotiations. You got Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska, as we're going to find out in a second. Zelenskyy not invited. Czechoslovakia was not even invited to negotiations. It was simply presented with a done deal. Upon returning to London, the then Prime Minister Chamberlain solemnly declared peace for our time. Just 6 months later, Hitler violated the agreement by occupying all of Czechoslovakia and soon after unleashed World War II. There you go. I see this as not really very different. So, a ceasefire deadline passes, says the Kyiv Independent. No additional Russia sanctions have been announced by Trump, and the US president has not imposed fresh sanctions on Russia, even as Moscow refused to cease hostilities in Ukraine by his August the 8th deadline. This is TACO. Trump always chickens out, and that appears to be what he's done. Again, he has been owned by Putin. He has been manipulated by Putin. He is putty in Putin's hands. So then Trump announced this last night, as Jason J Smart says Trump to meet Putin on US soil on August 15th, 2025 in Alaska. A handshake in America's front yard while Russia wages war in Ukraine. And this is entirely what Putin would want. You've got to understand what Alaska is to Russia. You've got to understand how Putin has won this hands down. Putin is laughing all the way to the bank, Christmas, whatever. Trump said, the highly anticipated meeting between myself as President of the United States of America, thank you, and President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August 15th, 2025, in a great state of Alaska. Further details to follow. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, this has got people really annoyed. So before we go on to the details of the proposal, let's talk about Alaska and Steve Witkoff. So Trump is to meet in Alaska. That's the big news there with Putin. Trump suggested to Giorgia Meloni, the leader of Italy, that they should hold a Ukraine peace meeting with Putin and Zelenskyy in Rome. Zelenskyy agreed to this, but Russia rejected Italy as a venue. Russia rejected, and then they get Alaska. Russia is dictating what is going on here. Let's talk about Alaska. Jake Bro has a thread. Putin has once again proven that Trump is his bitch and will do anything to serve him. Why Alaska, though? First, Putin is terrified of his plane being shot down. If Putin flew to the Middle East, then Ukraine intelligence would get potentially 2 shots at him flying over other countries. Going to Alaska means he can travel safely over the North Pole. You see the arrow there in that map. Second, Putin wants to visit US soil and spit in the face of international law. Putin has killed millions of people and is the #1 terrorist in the world. Trump is about to give him the red carpet treatment on US soil. American democracy has fallen, and Putin wants to prove it to everyone. So this is super important. If America do not arrest Putin when he goes to Alaska, because they are signatories to the Rome Statute, I presume, I'm pretty sure the US are, the US is, if they don't arrest Putin, then that means no other country in the world has to arrest Putin, and Putin can go to his BRICS meetings and do whatever he likes, and he has completely safe passage anywhere in the world. He has an arrest warrant on his head from the International Criminal Court. Actually, I take that back. Famously, the US is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, so they don't have to arrest Putin as he comes into the US. So I take that back. However, this, I think, does set a precedent that the US, as seen as the arbiter of international, I guess, political morality. No, I don't. I think it's too much. But it's supposed to be the beacon of freedom and democracy around the world. Welcomes Vladimir Putin to its soil. That is a massive win for Putin, and it does send a signal to other countries that, well, look, if the US can accept Putin, then why can't we? Even if we are signatories to the Rome statute and beholden, obliged to arrest Putin if he comes into our country due to the arrest warrant. Now, second, so third, Alaska used to be a Russian territory. This will be a coup for Russian nationalists at home who already want to see Alaska return to Putin's new Russian empire. Trump is going to kiss Putin's feet, welcoming the Tsar back to his old imperial territory. Trump just wants the attention. Putin is actually trying to build a new economic and political world order that can finally destroy the United States for good. So Trump just wants the grandiose meeting with Putin. He doesn't care where it is. He doesn't understand the symbolism. He doesn't understand the power plays going on here. Trump's narcissism means that he doesn't really understand when he gets owned by Putin. He has the fallacy of invincibility. He just thinks, hey, I'm amazing. I'm the center of the world. No one has the better of me. And he occasionally comes out with, like, I think Putin's trying to tap me out or whatever, which is some admission that Putin's trying to play him, but he won't be played. And he talks about how previous American leaders have been played by Putin, but he won't be played. Well, he is being played, but he doesn't understand when he's being played because of his narcissism. It's happened in 2018 in Helsinki. So inviting Putin to Alaska, agreeing to that, is a win for Putin, but Trump won't understand that it's a win for Putin. He just thinks I'm going to get a Nobel Peace Prize, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. So the whole Alaska meeting has Joe Walsh, a former Republican, going nuts. Friday night tequila tweet. It's effing disgraceful and despicable that Trump is meeting Putin on American soil. All caps, on American soil. Putin is an effing war criminal who invaded a sovereign nation and killed and destroyed the lives of millions of Ukrainians. No effing way should Putin be on American soil. He's annoyed. You can tell he's super annoyed, and he has every right to be, Joe Walsh. That is exactly how I feel. This is just a win for Putin. He gets invited onto American soil. But it gets worse. So let's now go to Steve Witkoff, who met with Putin, first with Kirill Dmitriev, and then had a 3-hour meeting with Putin, and then had this proposal that apparently, according to the Bild, the German tabloid, he didn't understand and got it the wrong way round. So then takes us back to the US and goes, look, what the Russians have proposed. Actually, no, that's really bad. And like, what do you think was going on? Steve Witkoff, because he's completely ignorant, really, of the requisite knowledge he needs to be in the position he's in, just misread the whole situation, but also got absolutely, well, again, most people would be embarrassed or find this whole scenario embarrassing. But Steve Witkoff appeared not to, again, quite understand. Humiliation follows humiliation, says Michael Weiss. You almost have to admire it until you realize we invite it, he says, as an American. So, scoop here. What's gone on? Putin gave President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, an award to pass along to a senior CIA official whose son was killed in Ukraine while fighting alongside Russian forces. The sources told CBS. So, do you remember a few months ago that CIA operative's son he signed up, he was like this left-wing idealist, went to across to Moscow and ended up joining the armed forces in Ukraine, Russian armed forces, and fighting in Ukraine, and ended up dying. And it was highly embarrassing because he was fighting for the Russians, and his father was in the CIA. Well, now Putin gives an award to the father, to Steve Witkoff. Oh, that's nice award, but it's just it's a thinly veiled insult, really. It's ridiculing the whole situation. The gesture by Putin, known for mind games and attempts to expose adversaries' points of weakness, was likely meant to raise unhelpful questions, and comes after Trump has expressed increasing frustration with the Kremlin. Sorry, my hand shaking there. So as next state, Putin handed Witkoff an Order of Lenin during their meeting for senior official Yuliana Galina, CBS News report, citing sources. Earlier, it was reported that the 21-year-old son, Michael Gloss, died in 2024 while fighting on Russia's side. According to sources, Galina is currently the CIA's... obviously a female. I said father. Died in 2024 while fighting on Russia's side. According to sources, Galina is currently the CIA's Deputy Director for Digital Innovation. The exact circumstances of the award handover and its subsequent fate remain unclear. Michael Gloss's obituary states that he, quote, tragically died in Eastern Europe. On April 4th, 2024, his father, Iraq war veteran Larry Gloss, told the Washington Post that neither he nor Galina knew their son was in Ukraine and that he was taking part in the war, or that he was taking part in the war. The Order of Lenin is one of the USSR's highest honors, which has not been awarded since the country's dissolution. And the headline from this newspaper is Putin needles US by giving Trump envoy an award meant for CIA official whose son died fighting for Russia. And that's the award there. Look at the abomination Witkoff, says John Jackson, is carrying back to Trump, a reward, a war criminal American traitor who hated his own country on behalf of baby killer in chief Vladimir Putin. So, like, this is in and of itself is seen as controversial enough. And Witkoff is just, I don't know, being played. Julia Davis says, what an insult. And Witkoff took it. Putin needles the US by giving Trump envoy Steve Witkoff an award meant for CIA official whose son died fighting in Russia. So Putin proposed so now let's go to what was then proposed to Steve Witkoff. Putin proposed halting the war in exchange for Ukraine's eastern regions in meeting with Witkoff, the Wall Street Journal reports. And here we're going to go to the Kiev Independence interpretation of what happened. So we are back to square one. This is exactly where we were previously, and it's a complete vindication of our predictions yesterday that what Russia are going to do is propose something that's ridiculous for Ukraine, but the US might not realize it's ridiculous for Ukraine. Ukraine are going to say no, and Ukraine become the bad guys. So let's have a look at what they say. So Putin introduced a sweeping proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during a meeting with US envoy Steve Witkoff, offering a halt in hostilities in exchange for Ukraine's eastern regions, a Wall Street Journal reported, citing European and Ukrainian officials, despite Trump's claim that the talks between Witkoff and Putin did not serve as a breakthrough in peace negotiations. The US president announced on August the 8th that he will meet Putin for the first in-person encounter on August the 15th in Alaska. According to European officials briefed on a call by Witkoff, Putin told Witkoff that Russia would agree to a full ceasefire if Kiev withdrew its forces from Donetsk Oblast, giving Moscow full control of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblasts, as well as Crimea. So the Ukrainians would have to it's not just drawing a line where the territories are, but giving the Russians even more territory. Additional Yes, so European officials briefed on the proposal reportedly expressed serious reservations about the plan. We'll come to that later. Worried about the prospects that Putin is pulling along negotiations as he means to avoid punishing secondary sanctions proposed by US President Donald Trump. Additional reservations posed by European officials include a lack of clarity as to territory partially occupied by Russian forces in Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts, with conflicting impressions as to whether the front line would be frozen in its current place or whether there would be a withdrawal of Russian forces in the region. According to the Wall Street Journal, Putin's proposal contains two phases. The first phase would entail Ukrainian forces withdrawing from Donetsk, thus freezing the front line. The second phase would entail Trump and Putin agreeing to a final peace plan, and that would later be negotiated with President Zelenskyy. So again, you have a peace negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine initially. This is just between Trump and Putin. And Trump, we know, really doesn't have Ukraine's best intentions at heart. So he will be negotiating on behalf of Ukraine, negotiating over Ukraine without them having a say so. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's the Munich Agreement 2.0. Ukraine currently controls the northern part of Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast, as well as part of Donetsk Oblast, and the tiny bit of Luhansk too, I think. Yes, as you can see there. So I forgot to mention that. Amid reports on the proposal in recent days, the US has publicly toyed with prospects of swapping land in exchange for peace. Trump told reporters on August the 8th yesterday that a potential peace deal between Moscow and Kiev would likely include some swapping of territories. While you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years, so we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back. Trump said during a press conference alongside the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, some swapping. It's complicated. I mean, he's really simplifying it is complicated, but just talking about just a bit of swapping, as if, you know, this isn't territory that's owned by the sovereign nation of Ukraine. That you can just give away parts of your territory and be fine with that. Give away parts of your country. I mean, what would you give away, Trump, in the US if Putin landing in Alaska then said, right, we now control Alaska. We are going to contest Alaska, and then you get embroiled in a war. Would you give some of your American territory away? I don't think you would. So why are you so eager to give Ukrainian territory away? It's because you don't give a damn about Ukraine and you just want the Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There will be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. Is this all for the betterment of Ukraine? I think that's insulting. Trump did not specify what he meant by swapping. Russia previously declared the annexation of the latter four regions, which are partially occupied by Russia, in 2022 following sham referenda. Seemingly ramping up pressure to come to a peace agreement, Trump said that Zelenskyy was going to have to get ready to sign something without specifying what terms to agreement may be present. So he's now saying he's now priming the situation in favor of Russia. He's not saying that Putin has to sign something. He's putting the pressure on Zelensky. Zelensky, you're going to have to sign something. We're going to swap some of your territories in, and you're going to have to sign something. It's up to you now. We're doing the hard work of divvying up your country. Oh, it's really difficult. Oh, it's really complicated. You have that. Ukraine can have that. You have that. Ukraine can have that. You're right with that, Zelensky. Tough luck. You're going to have to sign it. Sign it now. Sign it now. Now. This is insanely insulting. It just, honestly, it makes my blood boil. Um, the US have been played. They've been absolutely played. Trump is a child among adults. So he's pathetic. Putin offers US to stop the war in exchange for eastern Ukraine. The offer has prompted the Trump administration to begin preparations for a summit with the Russian leader, but European officials have been skeptical, says Max 25, summarizing a Wall Street Journal piece. European and Ukrainian officials briefed by Trump and Witkoff in a series of calls this week said they feared Putin was using the offer as a maneuver to avoid tough new US sanctions and tariffs while continuing the war. Well done, Putin. Putin has won this. He's brilliant. He knows how to play Trump and Witkoff. Putin. He has come away from this without sanctions. There should have been sanctions on yesterday. They didn't happen. A Ukrainian official spoke with Trump on Wednesday, said that Kyiv is not generally rejecting the proposals, but believes a ceasefire must be reached before any further steps are taken. They've got to be careful not to say an outright no, because they'll look sort of intransigent. So they have to say, but I think this is right. We need a ceasefire first, and this is what they said previously during the Istanbul negotiations. You ceasefire first, then we can talk about the details. Ukrainian and European officials have consistently rejected the idea of formally recognizing Russian control over the captured territories. Ukraine's constitution, and this is so important because, if Steve Witkoff and Trump don't understand this, if they've not been briefed and they don't get this, then they're going to be demanding things that are constitutionally impossible for Ukraine. Zelensky cannot sign away territory unilaterally. He cannot do it. It's not legally permissible in his country or constitutionally permissible. Ukraine's constitution prohibits Zelensky from approving territorial changes on his own. He has to take it back to the people, and the people will probably go, Although there are interesting changes in polling coming out from Ukraine with regard to negotiations as opposed to sustained war. But it depends what those negotiations will bring about, right? So then we have the article in the Bild. Before we look at more at what Trump has said and then international reactions, Igor Sushko says, this would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, quote, misunderstood Putin. When Putin demanded Ukraine withdraw from its own Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, Witkoff thought Putin meant Russia will withdraw its forces. He got it entirely the wrong way round, at least according to the Bild. So this is an English, a Google translation of the Russian translation of the German article originally. So, take that into account. Witkoff doesn't know what he's talking about. US envoy misunderstood Putin. Kremlin still wants 4 Ukrainian regions. Bild sources claim that Vladimir Putin still wants to fully control the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. He has proposed only a partial cessation of attacks on energy facilities and major cities in the rear, but not a comprehensive ceasefire. In other words, this is completely in favor of Russia. The US, on the other hand, proposed freezing the conflict along the current front line in exchange for broad lifting of sanctions, of course, and new economic agreements with Russia, of course. According to Bild, the Kremlin did not want to accept this proposal. So even with that proposal, they're like, no, we want something, one presumes, even more beneficial to Russia. So moreover, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff misunderstood Putin's statements and took them for a concession. Thus, he understood the, quote, peaceful withdrawal of Ukrainians from Kherson and Zaporizhia demanded by Russia as a proposal for a peaceful withdrawal of Russians from these very regions. Witkoff doesn't know what he's talking about, it's a quote, a Ukrainian government official told Bild. According to the editorial board, this assessment is shared by representatives of the German government. So you've got German and Ukrainian officials saying Witkoff doesn't know what he's talking about. I've said this time and time again. He's just abjectly ignorant of the requisite knowledge. And yet he's the one that's at the center of these negotiations. It's a freaking joke. The whole thing's a joke, honestly. On the evening of July the 7th, as Bilt has learned, a telephone conference took place between the US, namely Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance, and European partners. The Europeans got the impression that the Americans themselves had not yet come to a common understanding of what was happening. It's not that they didn't have any decent proposals. They didn't even the Americans didn't understand what was happening. This was primarily due to Witkoff, whose statements about his conversation with Putin in the Kremlin were perceived as confusing. Remember when he met with Putin the first time, he didn't take anyone in there. Who's taking notes? No one's taking notes. He has a Kremlin translator that is the go-between between him and Putin, has this meeting, and has to come out and remember everything that was said in that meeting. It was one of the most important meetings, certainly the most important meeting of his life, a meeting concerning the outcome for 40 odd million Ukrainians, and no one's taking notes. He's in there on his own. So who knows what happened in the meeting yesterday with Putin? If Witkoff is sounding confused and misunderstanding Putin, it's because it's just so frustrating. So this was primarily due to Witkoff, whose statements about the conversation with Putin in the Kremlin were perceived as confusing. The Europeans found him overloaded and incompetent when talking about territorial issues. When I say the Trump administration is unserious, when I say they don't know what they're doing, when I say they put in people who are insanely unprepared and unqualified for the job, this is what I mean. If you get Pete Hegseth in charge of DOD, if you get Tulsi Gabbard in charge of national intelligence, if you get Steve Witkoff as an envoy to Russia, this is what you get. If you get Kristi Noem with a melting face as Secretary of the Homeland Security, if you get Duffy in charge of NASA now, this is what you get. These are just unserious. The GOP has become a joke under Trump. It is no longer a serious political party. It is a MAGA manifestation of unserious governance mixed with incredibly dangerous political ideology. And you may be a Republican that gets really upset with me saying that, or you may be a Republican that agrees and you know that MAGA has taken over the party and is destroying the American political system. But if you're the former and you're getting upset with me, you're not looking carefully enough. You are looking through squinted eyes because you want your party to be awesome. And you can't accept that you've got people like this operating on your behalf. It is deeply sad. There also appears to be disagreement between Witkoff and Rubio over the role in Europe. So Rubio is one of these kind of old school conservative proper GOP. You know, I have my issues with Marco Rubio, don't get me wrong, but he understands stuff way, way more than Witkoff. So it wouldn't surprise me that there is a disagreement. Problem is, you've got Vance thrown in there as well, and Vance is cleverer than someone like Witkoff, but he's dangerous. He's a Peter Thiel techno-fascist, you know, and that's a technical term. Project 2025 ideologue, right? So Vance is not welcome, I think, in this whole setup. The Secretary of State emphasized that Europeans should be involved in the negotiating process. Yes, Marco Rubio, you understand this. While Vance and Witkoff wanted only to inform Europe of the results of Trump's next steps. There you go. There, honestly, that paragraph shows you the GOP. The old GOP, the Reagan Republican GOP, is Marco Rubio saying, of course, Europe needs to be involved in this. Ukraine is in Europe. Geographically, it wants to accede to the European Union as a political entity. This is a European problem, and we keep saying this is Europe's problem. And then as soon as it comes to solving the problem, we say Europe can't be a part of solving the problem. But you just said this is Europe's problem. Yes, it's Europe's problem, but they can't be a part of it. Rubio knows that that's ridiculous. So the Europeans need to be a part of this. J.D. Vance, with his ideology of being deeply, deeply anti-European, and Steve Witkoff as being just grossly ignorant. Like, no, we want Trump to decide whatever happens with Ukraine, and then we'll inform the Europeans post facto. There you go. Honestly, it is an absolute shit show. Michael White said, would require Ukrainian withdrawal from Donetsk and Luhansk, but no equivalent Russian withdrawal from Kherson and Zaporizhia, and no security guarantee for Ukraine, or any indication Russia would refrain from fighting again once it gobbled up more territory. This isn't a deal, it's a fire sale. And that is with reference to the Wall Street Journal article. John Jackson says, understand the bait and switch that just took place here. Trump was supposed to punish Putin with sanctions if he didn't agree to a ceasefire by today. But now Putin said no ceasefire unless Ukraine gives up even land it still occupies. Most humiliated president of all time. That last sentence I would disagree with wholeheartedly, because Trump can't get humiliated. He is humiliated from our point of view. What a humiliation. Trump won't feel that. Blithely waltzing through this humiliation with his fallacy of invincibility. It's an absolute clown show. It's a circus. Kirill Dmitriev then needles it in here. Donald Trump, our team kept the Ukraine conflict from spiraling into World War III. That's leadership. I mean, this is Dmitriev just fawning over Trump because he knows how to manipulate him. All you need to do is give him gold and say how wonderful he is, and offer him the Nobel Peace Prize, and you can manipulate him like putty in your hand. That's Trump. He's so easy to manipulate. I said back in 2016, this makes him dangerous as a president. I wrote article after article on this in 2016. My position on Trump has not changed in 10 years. I've been entirely consistent. And do you know what? My claims have been borne out by history, been validated by history. I haven't had to change my opinion on Trump one iota. Do you know what? I feel even more this way now. Our team kept the Ukraine, our team, that's like us and you. Hey, Trump, you and I, team Trump Putin. Our team kept the Ukraine conflict from spiraling into World War III. You're the ones that invaded, you prime expletives. That's leadership, he says. Well done, Trump, that's leadership. Biden's brinkmanship pushed the other way. Thankfully, it failed. Biden had a moral backbone. Jake Pro says, Trump is talking like there's been a new diplomatic breakthrough with a land swap deal, but this is what the Russians have been demanding from Trump for 7 months. It's back to square one. We are back to square one. There's no change. Been played, delayed, and they're saying the same things they said previously. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 week. Too damned weak. It is not new, and Ukraine will never agree to it for painfully obvious reasons to everyone but Trump, says Jake Bro. Adam Kinzinger, former lawmaker, Republican lawmaker. For those who were hopeful that Trump pivoted on Ukraine, the meeting in Alaska will sell Ukraine down the river. Trump is scared to death of Putin. Taco. Trump always chickens out. I disagree again with Adam Kinzinger here. Trump isn't scared to death of Putin. Trump doesn't understand. Trump's narcissism means he doesn't understand he's getting played. He thinks he's doing an amazing job, Trump, because no one around him is correcting him. We've seen this time and time again. They don't correct him on basic mathematical stupidity. I'm going to get the drugs prices down by 1,500%. You can't do that. That's ridiculous. You'll be paying people 15 times what they were paying to take the drugs. It's obviously ridiculous. No one corrects him on that. No one corrects him on any of his insanity. He's not scared of Putin. No one will correct this trajectory. And he just swans through thinking he's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And then people like the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, because they know that's how to manipulate Trump and get him on side, say, yeah, we're going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. Then you've got Netanyahu saying Nobel Peace Prize. And you've got other people who just want to suck up to Trump and America saying, yeah, we'll put him forward for a Nobel Peace Prize. And he thinks he's doing a wonderful job. He's not scared to death. He's completely freaking oblivious. Tim White just sums it up very succinctly. So let's step back and see what Putin got today. No promised sanctions or tariffs. Another week of delay. Legitimacy, meeting Trump, excluding Zelenskyy to get his deal accepted first in Alaska, so that's legitimacy as well. Avoiding arrest on war crime charges. What Putin failed to get, nothing. He failed to get anything. And then he then talks about the staggering, woeful lack of protocol judgment and or knowledge by US Gulf envoy Steve Witkoff. Shamefully, he accepted an award from Putin to humiliate a CIA officer whose son died while fighting for his terrorist horde. He should resign. He won't. That's his position. Right. And that Trump keeps saying, President Putin, I believe, wants to see peace, shows you that Trump is no more knowledgeable about Putin than Steve Witkoff. It is deeply embarrassing that Trump can still be spouting this idea that he just wants peace. Look at Moldova, 1992, Georgia, 2008, Ukraine, 2014. Look at Chechnya. Throw that one in there as well. Just, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke.
Leaders want to see peace. President Putin, I believe, wants to see peace.
No,
and
no,
Zelenskyy
no.
wants to see peace. Now,
yes.
President Zelenskyy has to get all of his everything he needs, because he's going to have to get ready to sign something. And I think he.
So, again, the onus is on Zelenskyy here and not on Putin.
He is working hard to get that done.
Will Zelenskyy have to give up territory, Mr. President?
Well,
is he going to have to give up
territory?
territory
That's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians.
Oh, a lot of Russians died. How sad. They invaded and been fought over. I mean, it has obviously been fought over. But the language that Trump uses here, like, completely abdicates moral responsibility from a Russian point of view. It's just like this, as if two brothers are fighting over a toy. I mean, I don't know who's in it. They should both probably get a little bit of a play with it. But look at them over there. And he's used this kind of child, let them fight it out analogy before. Rather than, oh, look, a stranger's just come and beaten the crap out of that child and nicked their toys. That's morally egregious. Let's go and do over the stranger, or type thing. No. Just
have died, so we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back, and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both, and but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever. Yeah.
Either later or tomorrow or whatever. Some swapping, switching for the betterment of both. Both sides are lost. I mean, like I've told you before, Trump only ever talks in vagueness. He has no real grasp of the details. If you ask him what the regions that were being contested were, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and then Crimea as well, I bet you couldn't tell you. Kate from Kharkiv says, it's horrifying that he's once again demanding territorial concessions from Ukraine and offering our land to Russia before any meaningful negotiations have even begun. So these aren't, like, you've got to understand that this isn't Zelenskyy and Putin starting negotiations. This is, let's have an agreement without Ukraine before negotiations. Like, we are going to dictate an agreement and then you have to sign up for that. That's not a negotiation. That's an imposition. That is the US imposing Russian demands on Ukraine. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And then, oh my word, I can't. I can't. I just can't. Why did reporters, of course, they just want these little sound bites, but all reporters do is blow smoke up this guy's ass. And oh yeah. Oh, you ask me about Nobel Peace Prize. Oh no, I'm not interested. No. Yeah. I definitely would. No. I don't. Give it to me. Give it to me now.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee will make their announcement as it relates to this year's Nobel Peace Prize on October the 10th, Friday, October the 10th. Is that date circled on your calendar, Mr. President?
I can't say. I mean, a lot of people say, no matter what I did, because, I'm of a certain persuasion, no matter what I do, they won't give it. And I'm not politicking for it. I have a lot of people that are. I know. I mean, I read the same things as you do. But it would be a great honor, certainly. But I would never politic. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because of, I really, number one, I want to save lives. That's
bollocks. No, you don't. You want to get a good deal for the US out of Russia. You want to exploit and extort Ukraine. And then you want the veneer of a peace deal, forced negotiation, so that you can get a Nobel Peace Prize. You don't care one iota about the people.
That's why I'm involved so much with Ukraine and Russia. It's saving lives of Russians and Ukrainians. It's not
Russians first.
Now,
saving lives of Russians and Ukraine. You know the people that invaded.
That could have been a world war. I think if we didn't come, Ukraine, Russia would have ended up being a world war. And I stopped that. That stopped. Now
No,
the
you
only
haven't.
question is when.
No, you haven't. It's still going on in exactly the same way it was. And Russia is still attacking with cyber warfare and information warfare and sabotage Western nations, including yours. You gargantuan nincompoop.
When is it going to be settled? And it could be very soon. But when is it going to be? But that would have been a world war. If I didn't come along with a very talented group of people sitting largely right here, but there are others not in the room that are very talented, I think Russia, Ukraine would have had a very, very high degree, I think even probably would have ended up being in a world war.
Your predecessor.
I don't think people talk about that now because they don't see it anymore. But we brought it down a long way. But that was getting to a point. When I first came in, I said, wow, this thing is really bad. And it could have escalated to a level that you people would have been very unhappy with. Yeah.
Your predecessor.
Absolutely ridiculous statements. Right, so moving on, this goes back to Zelenskyy must be ready to sign something. So the onus is on Zelenskyy, as Visioner points out there. That's really frustrating. Reporter says, yeah, we've seen about the betterment of both and it's complicated, etc., etc. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the kind of European reaction to this. And we have Zelenskyy saying, well, Zelenskyy shut down Trump and Putin's reported idea of handing Ukrainian land to Russia. No one will retreat. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier, he said days before the Alaska meeting between the two leaders. So if we first of all look at his statement from his social media, he says, Ukrainians defend what's theirs. Even those who are with Russia know that Russia is doing evil. Of course, we will not reward Russia for what it has perpetrated. The Ukrainian people deserve peace, but all partners must understand what a dignified peace is. That's pointed, obviously, all partners, i.e. the US, must understand what a dignified peace is. This is a just peace, not just a rushed peace. This war must be brought to an end and Russia must end it. Russia started it and is dragging it out, ignoring all deadlines, and that is a problem, not something else. So it's not that I need to sign something. It's Russia is dragging this out to try and get their objectives achieved. The answer to the Ukrainian territorial question already is in the constitution of Ukraine. No one will deviate from this and no one will be able to. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier. So that's just a non-starter. Ukraine is ready for real decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine, are at the same time decisions against peace. They will not achieve anything. These are stillborn decisions. They are unworkable decisions, and we all need real and genuine peace, peace that people will respect. We are ready to work together with President Trump, together with all our partners for real and, most importantly, lasting peace, a peace that will not collapse because of Moscow's desires. I thank all our people for being together. Ukraine is. I thank all our soldiers for preserving our independence. Stand firm. This is our land. We are Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. I think that says it perfectly well. That, I mean, he does then have, in fact, that is below here. He has his video address that says fairly similar things to that. In 48 hours, Trump and his team have been humiliated, says Tim White, getting nothing from Moscow except for a certificate for a dead American to undermine the CIA, leaping on Putin's command. And now the US president invites a war criminal imperialist to Alaska, which they call Russian Alaska. And he then, allows, well, then posts a video of Zelensky speaking in his daily. I don't know if this is his nightly video or this was a separate one with regard to what has taken place vis-a-vis negotiations. Yeah, the war must be brought to an end and Russia must end it. Russia started it and is dragging it out, ignoring all deadlines. Yeah. So it sounds like fairly similar rhetoric there. And that really puts down what the US has proposed and Russia has proposed. But the question is, will the US see that as Ukrainian intransigence, that the Ukrainians are not playing ball with regard to being ready for negotiations? But of course, the Russians have said, have demanded completely unrealistic things. US, Ukrainian, and European officials will meet in the UK this weekend to align their stance ahead of the planned Trump Putin summit, amid fears Trump could strike a peace deal with Moscow that sidelines allies. And that's coming from Axios. That is definitely a worry. Zelensky spoke with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We see the same need for a truly sustainable peace for Ukraine and the danger of the Russian plan to reduce everything to discussing the impossible. Clear steps are needed, maximum coordination with our partners. And then we have the French leader spoke with the French President Emmanuel Macron. Ukraine, France, and all partners are ready to work as productively as possible for real peace. It is really important that the Russians do not succeed in deceiving anyone again. We all need a real end to the war. And then you have Baltic leaders have condemned efforts to pressure Ukraine into giving up territory, warning that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia could be next, the Financial Times reports. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna said, if borders can be changed by force, no one can feel safe. Okay, so the Europeans seem to be very obviously, or certainly the Baltics here, very obviously against the proposals, but the Europeans certainly are keen to be involved, obviously, and Ukraine is keen that the Europeans are involved. So the Americans, the Europeans, and Ukrainians are going to meet in the UK this weekend. Now, there are claims that this might happen in Chevening House in Kent, in England. US official said, according to Barack Ravid, quote, today, Vice President J.D. Vance, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and representatives of Ukraine and our European allies will meet at Chevening House in Kent, England. Problem is, this is J.D. Vance, and this is someone who is, I think, unserious about European security. He is ideologically aligned to, well, goodness knows what, Project 2025, but I think there's a strong Euroscepticism there in JD Vance. He's already come and slagged off Europe for its lack of freedom and then taken the US in a completely illiberal direction. So I think he's exactly the wrong person to be involved in alignment there. So if it's JD Vance, I'm not hopeful for Ukraine to be at the forefront of the objectives. And yeah, that's pretty frustrating. Now, the Institute for the Study of War pretty much sums it up, assesses that Putin's ceasefire proposals may be aimed at delaying new sanctions and shifting blame to Ukraine if talks fail. The analysis notes Russia often uses such tactics to buy time and avoid accountability for continued aggression. He's done this time and time already before. Just a master at delaying, at not getting any punishments put on them. It's just so annoying. Yeah, ceding Donbass to Russia would destroy Ukraine's strategic defense line. ISW warns, this is Dmitry from War Translated summarizing here, the loss of this barrier would open the way for further Russian advances. And ISW notes Russia would likely violate any truce without strong guarantees and controls for Ukraine. We are honestly back to where we were 6-7 months ago. It's so predictable, and that's what's sad about this. We were kind of predicting a worst case scenario, which was kind of this, and this is what's come about. Ugh. Just where are the decent American geopolitical strategists and diplomats? Where have they gone? Why is this stuff being sorted out by a mixture of freaking Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump, and JD Vance? It's like the Three Stooges, except one of them's pretty evil, JD Vance, and the other two are just idiots. Honestly, it's a shocker. Absolute shocker.